Marc, I'm going to take a look at the types of things that you love to do. Oscar nominated for Capturing the Friedmans, produced Catfish, which turned into a series, The Jinx and All Good Things about Robert Durst, which we know a little bit about here in the Galveston, Houston area.
I did not kill my best friend. I did dismember him.
Games, Cops, Drugs, and the podcast Crime Town. You clearly have that peel back the onion type of mind. Where did that come from?
That's a really good question. I haven't thought about that a lot. I mean, I've always been sort of interested in crime stories, and I think my interest really comes from, the idea that I can solve it in some way, that I can find a truth in the story that maybe was not there before. That doesn't mean that, I'm trying to look for guilt or innocence. I'm just trying to find why people do things, and crime is sort of the distillation of the human experience. It's people doing things at a very extreme level. So for me, I just feel like if I dig deep enough, long enough, I can come up with answers.
And I think that's the reason why for a lot of us, it is kind of that guilty pleasure. I think no one likes to admit that they can binge watch things like Snapped all day long, right? Because people might think, what's wrong with that? Right? But why do you think it is the rest of us and are so interested in it, and that these are the series and stories and things that seem to really pique people's interest?
Well, I think people are interested in extreme. I mean, real life is confusing, it's illogical, and often it doesn't make sense to us. So then we hear about these crimes and they seem the extreme version of that. Why would somebody do that? Particularly in this story where Jeffrey McDonald was accused of and convicted of killing his family, was a Green Beret doctor who was, by all accounts, the all-American boy. He was Princeton grad and captain of his football team in high school, handsome, perfect family. We need answers. Our brains are set up to find answers to questions and to, sort of finish the puzzle. And crime storytelling is, it's all about finishing the puzzle.
Yeah, a wilderness of error. You're right. There are several pieces missing, and you can look at this story has been done many times through books, through explanation, through film and video. And at the end of the day, of every one of them, you could end and say, absolutely guilty. But then again, you watch another and you go, oh, might be innocent. And there's the mystery that you talk about. What attracted you to do a wilderness of error when others had already done this story?
Well, it was just that. I mean, everybody had done this story, it seems. Joe McGinnis did an incredible job. I mean, if you read his book, it's very well researched. He spent 4 years embedded with Jeffrey for all intents and purposes. And then there was Errol Morris, who was my true crime hero in some ways for Thin Blue Line, which I saw when I was young and was formative to who I am. I thought that film was extraordinary. He wrote the book, A Wilderness of Error. So I felt like there's Errol on one side of this, here's Joe on the other side of this. In between, there's all these other books and movies, one saying he's innocent, one saying he's guilty. Maybe if I dug into it, and maybe this is my ego, and I slowed the story down, I could give the viewer the tools they need to make their own decision about guilt and innocence. I think that people who watch it, yeah, they will flip-flap back and forth, but ultimately I think most people will come down to a conclusion of their own based on the evidence that we presented.
What's interesting about what you do and how you do it is that our mind has to catch up with some stereotypes, because the stereotype of somebody who's, as you mentioned, Green Beret, a doctor, Princeton graduate, could never do anything like this. But as we know, we've seen some very formidable psychopaths in the world.
Dr. Jeffrey McDonald has been charged with the murders of his pregnant wife and their 2 young daughters.
Well, nobody is as they present themselves to the world exactly, right? We all have gray areas. We all carry baggage. We have things that probably upset ourselves about who we are. So, digging behind those facades is part of the job.
What do you want somebody to get out of this at the end of the whole deal, like just for them and in terms of how they look at anything in the world?
Well, I've got a lot of anxiety about this film going out in the world, this series, because this thing's been litigated in the public eye so much that people have very, very strong opinions.
The McDonald murder case is one of the cases of the century. Either Jeffrey McDonald slaughtered his family, or they were intruders imitating the Manson family.
I hope that in some ways this will be clarifying, that it will allow people to sit back and think about their preconceived notions of what they thought before, and either reevaluate or say, you know, I think this falls where I fall. I try really, really hard, and with a team here at my company, to erase pre-biases, even when they appear based on real evidence, to ask the questions of the other side. And that's, I think, what we did in the series.
And that's something that we need every day, that third non-judgmental eye. And sometimes I think we have to admit we just don't know and let it go. Yeah, to kill your family. I know we've seen that story before.
We are hearing new details about a man convicted of killing his pregnant wife and 2 daughters in Colorado. You may remember Chris Watts. He is serving a life sentence for those murders.
Every time it is so unbelievable, especially the pregnant wife and 2 young daughters murdered. That's a kind of a storyline that we've seen before. And every time we can't believe that we're seeing that. I'm going to end with, what did you conclude?
I don't think it's my job as the maker of this or the maker of anything I've done to tell people what I think. I mean, I do privately, obviously, but I think what I concluded is in the series, I feel like it's a very challenging case. And if I were to get ahead of people viewing it by telling them what to think, I'd be doing what everybody else does in my business. You know, there's so much out there for people to watch and read that will tell you what you think, what to think. I'd rather not do that.
All right, I'm going to stop the record button. It's just you and me, cup of coffee. What do you think?
How do I
Marc.
get recording now?
You're a smart one. Okay, can't get one past you. Thank you very much. This is very intriguing stuff, and what I love is that it has an entertainment value to it, but more so than that, it does challenge us to stop, slow down, think, and be a little bit more non-judgmental on some things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.